friends. Okay, so I've been wanting to do this video ever since Valentine's Day, but then my family got sick and so I couldn't do it. But a lot of you have asked me, I have a lot of single men and women who watch my channel, and they've asked me if I would kind of give my story of how I met my husband and how I discerned and knew that he was my husband. So I'm going to share that with you. It's like one of my favorite things to talk about is my vocation. And as many of you might know, I actually didn't get married till I was 30 years old. So I had 20 all my 20s, I was single and just waiting for my husband, begging God to give me my husband, and stuff. So I actually was engaged before I met my husband, like 5 years before I met my husband. And people have asked me if I would share that part of my life with them. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to talk about a little bit about that, but then also about my whole vocation, which is marriage, because they were actually very similar in how I discern them. Like in the beginning, they were very similar, but the outcome was very different. I ended up marrying one of them, obviously. Okay, so the man that I was engaged to before, his name was Joe. And he was a great guy. He did net ministries and I did net ministries. We did them different years, but we pretty much fell in love and he proposed to me, and I almost immediately started having anxiety and fear and all of that. And I couldn't, something just wasn't right about it. And so I was having a hard time telling him. I was so afraid to tell him because I knew he was so in love with me. And to be honest, I was so in love with him. Like, he was a wonderful man. Like, he was anything I could ever want in a husband. To this day, I could not say a bad thing about him. Like, was just great. He was a devout Catholic. He was very respectful of me. We wanted the same things in life, children-wise and family-wise and stuff. So it was hard because I was 25 when we got engaged, and something inside of me was saying that he wasn't the one. And so I just struggled with that, and I didn't tell him at first, and then finally, like, the feelings inside of me just couldn't go away. I thought maybe they would go away eventually, but they just never did. And so I finally told him that I was having these feelings, and they were, and stuff, like I was having doubt about our relationship. And so he said, well, maybe you're afraid of marriage. So I come from a broken family. My parents got a divorce when I was very young. And so I thought, yeah, maybe I am just afraid of marriage, the vocation of marriage, and because forever seems so long and stuff. And so I thought, yeah, maybe I am. And so I ended up going to a counselor one time, just once. And actually it was very interesting because I talked the whole hour and I was explaining everything and why I felt that way. And, and at the end of the hour, the counselor was like, I don't think you need a counselor. She's like, in fact, I kind of feel like you should be a counselor. And I was like, oh, that's very nice of you. But that doesn't, it didn't help me in that situation, because I think a part of me wanted her to say, you're supposed to marry him or break up with him, and she wasn't doing that. Like, she pretty much let me figure out, talk it out. Anyway, so what it came down to was through a lot of prayer. I, went to a lot of masses. Went to confession all the time. I tried to discern the best that I could. And what it came down to was God was asking me to let go of Joe. And that was very hard because all I ever wanted was to be married and have children. And here was a great guy who wanted the same things I did, and that I loved. And so I finally, out of obedience, broke it off with him. And I was sad. Like, the sadness didn't go away. And I mean, it's kind of crazy because within a year, I believe he was married already. Like, so he got over it pretty quick, pretty quick. But, which in itself was painful for me because I was still like kind of grieving the process. And, we had mutual friends, so they were kind of keeping me in the loop of, you know, what was going on and stuff. So that was painful for me. But at the same time, I'm very happy for him and wish him the best, you know, and stuff. So through that, after that, I, you know, started dating guys, and, you know, I dated some really awesome, very respectful men. And to be honest, they were all very respectful of me. Like, I knew I wanted to save myself for marriage, and I told them right away. Like, that was one of my first conversations with them, so that they knew exactly where I was. And they were all very respectful for me, you know, towards me. I think they actually liked that I was like a woman who knew what I wanted, you know, as far as, you know, a husband and what I expected. And they were all really awesome men and really holy, good guys and stuff. But nothing, nothing marriage material. You know, there were times that we dated and I was like kind of forcing it, like wanting it to be that person because they were great, or whatever. But it always came down to no, this is not your husband, you know. And finally, I just had to kind of just give it all to God. I kind of stopped dating for a while, and I just remember it being like, you know, feeling like God was telling me, don't have a backup plan, because I always had a backup plan. And he's like, that is not trusting me. And so I finally let go of all of that, and I said, okay, God, like, if it means that I'm gonna be single for the rest of my life and that's your will, then that is what I want too. And within a couple weeks, that's when I met my husband. And so that was pretty neat story in itself. I was going to St. Gregory the Great in Virginia Beach, and I was in the young adult group there. At the time, there were a lot of young adults at the there, and they had a Bible study that had an actual professor there. And so I went there one night, and the entire room was filled full of people, young adults, and there was only one spot left, and it was by my husband. And so of course I sit down, and I'm like the last one there. I'm actually late, which I'm never late. I'm very like on time and prompt and everything. So I sit down, and I just feel sort of weird, like something was up, and it was it was like to this side of me, and something was weird, and I just had like this feeling. And I don't get those like vibe, I don't like believe in those, but like there was something different. Like when I sat next to this man, and I remember I couldn't sit still, like I was just like moving all over, like this is weird, like. And so towards the end of the class, the professor asked a question, and my husband raised his hand, and he said, well, when I went to Notre Dame, you know, and talked about when he went to the University of Notre Dame, and I've always wanted to marry a Notre Dame guy. I didn't know a single Notre Dame guy, but I knew I wanted to marry one. And so I was like, oh, who is this guy that I can't sit still next to? And so the class ends, and I say, oh, like, when did you go to Notre Dame? And I went to a game the same time that he went to university, and so we started talking and stuff. And it's so funny, like all my friends, my single friends, like swarmed us. They're like, oh, a new guy and stuff. So it was just kind of funny because so we started talking, and I just like was blown away by him. Like he just seemed like an amazing guy, like very humble, very sweet, like very intelligent and stuff. And so so I go home that night, and I write in my journal, I just met the most amazing man, but he was way too good for me, but I hope to marry somebody just like him. and stuff. So it's so funny. I kind of want to like put it up on my wall, like frame it so that I can remember when times get hard, which in every marriage they do, but I can be like, this guy is amazing. And I actually do tell him that all the time, like how amazing he is and how God loves me so much. I know, because he gave me such an amazing husband to be married to and stuff. So anyway, so you would think at that point that it was just magical. Like we knew and we rode off to the sunset and, but that was not the case. Almost immediately after we started dating each other, I started having the same panic and fear and anxiety. And I was devastated. I was just so bummed out because I remember saying, God, I am not going to find anyone better than this guy. Like, he is amazing. He really, truly is. And so I really had to discern, like, where is this anxiety and fear coming from? And so I would go to mass. I would go to confession all the time. I do all these things to try to help me to discern, like, is this my husband or not? Because I knew that, thankfully I knew this, but I knew that Satan did not want me to marry somebody that would get me to heaven, would help me get to heaven. So I knew that. So I had to kind of discern, is this from God saying, he is not your husband, Heather, or is this Satan trying to say he's not your husband? So I had to discern those two things. Like, is this from God or Satan? And so that process was about 2.5 months of just like having anxiety. I woke up in the middle of the night. I would have little panic attacks. It was all these things that, I was just struggling to know if this was of God or not, and finally I started a 9-day novena, and I asked God, I said, will you please, at the end of this novena, tell me if he is my husband or not. I cannot live like this anymore. I cannot live with this turmoil or not knowing if it's your will or Satan's will. I don't know where this is coming from. And so that's where I had to discern, like, where is this coming from? And so anyway, with that, I did the 9 days. I didn't tell my husband about it at all, Eric. Didn't tell him I was doing it because I didn't want him to influence it at all either. Like, I wanted it to be from God and God alone. And so we are in California at the time, and we're at the mission in San Luis Rey, and it's the 9th day of the novena. And so I still had that anxiety and fear, and I'm like, okay, it is still not gone, and so I just told my husband, well, at the time, just Eric, but I had told him, okay, I just need some time alone. I need to pray to God and just, be alone with him. And he's like, okay, and he was respectful, and he went and walked around. And so I went and prayed in the side chapel, and I just begged God. I started crying. I said, God, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I give him to you, because part of it was Eric was so amazing and so good that I held on for dear life. Fear that God would ask me to let go. And the more I held on, the more anxiety I had, because I was not truly being open to God's will. And so with that, I finally said, God, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I'm physically broken. I'm spiritually just broken person right now, and I can't live this way. And so with that, I said, God, I give it to you. I give Eric to you. I do not know if this is your will or his, but I'm ready to give him up. And I was literally ready to give him up. Goodbye. I'm never seeing you again. It's over. Like, at that point, and I think God knew that in the depth of my soul, that I was willing to choose God and God's will over my own at that point. And with that, he took everything away. And it was literally like that. I had no more panic attacks, no more fear, no more anxiety, nothing. It was so truly like refreshing, and at that same instant I knew he was my husband. It was almost like God was saying, are you willing to, are you putting him before me? Because I should be first. Even in marriage, God should always be first in everything. And so I feel like he gave me that gift of, okay, like, he is your husband. And so I was just like, oh my goodness, like, I was 30, and so I was like, finally I met like, I know who he is. Like, after my whole 20s of searching and looking and hoping, I knew my husband. And meanwhile, Eric had known all along. Like, he said he knew almost instantly that I was his wife. So he was just patiently waiting for me, and hoping for me and stuff. And I told him, I was like, please be gentle. Like, just, I discern things, and I'm just fragile kind of thing and stuff. So he knew to just not push it or anything. And so anyway, so I just got up, and I was just like a new woman. I was like, oh my goodness, so I was excited. And so I went to find him, and I go outside. If you've been to the mission, you go outside, and right as you're going out of the side chapel, there's this huge statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And my husband is literally standing underneath it. And I had just done the novena to the Sacred Heart. And so he turns around and sees me, and I'm just like, I have like goosebumps, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, thank you, God. Like, it was almost like God just gave me another sign, like, yes, like, I'm giving this gift to you of marriage, and stuff. So anyway, so we go, and I don't tell him. There's something inside me where I'm like, I know he's the one, but I can't tell him yet. I don't know why, like. And so we're driving to Coronado to see his brother, and he could tell I was weird, and he's like, what is going on? And I was like, I don't know, like, nothing. And so before, like, as we're leaving the mission, I asked God, I said, okay, if you want me to tell him that he is my husband, then you need to give me a rainbow. Like, I know he's my husband, but if I'm supposed to tell him, then give me a rainbow and I will tell him. Otherwise, I need a little time, and stuff. So we're driving, we're talking, and it happens to be, we are like literally driving into, like, it looks like pure darkness. It's like, it almost looks like it's nighttime. It's that dark, but it's in the middle of the day. And behind us is all light and bright and stuff. So we're driving into this like dark, like clouds and stuff. And so we're driving and we're talking and stuff, and he says, he's like, Heather, do you see that? And I look, and I kid you not, it was a rainbow, like, in the sky, in pure black darkness. And I was like, yes, I do. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. And he's like, what happened? And like, oh, I'm supposed to tell you something, but I don't know how to tell you. And he's like, okay. And I could tell he was like nervous. I think he thought I was going to break up with him. So I'm like, okay. So I told him the whole thing about the novena and the Sacred Heart and how everything was lifted. And so we like both were just in awe. We just were like super giggly and happy, and like, it was amazing. And it was literally from then on that, we got engaged like a month or two later, officially. And then he, within 6 months after the engagement, we were married. So it was like a year of like meeting and getting married, that we just knew. And I was, older. I was ready to have kids and all that. So it was awesome. And I want to share this to give you all hope, because for me, my vocation was something that was so hard to come by. Like, it was, like, those waiting times were literally painful for me. Like, I just remember thinking, I'm never gonna find that person. I'm never, I felt so sad about it. But it wasn't until I just kind of let go and just let God lead me and guide me that is when he led me to my husband, and I had no backup plans. I just was ready to live the rest of my life as a single woman if that's what God wanted, because ultimately God's will is gonna get us to heaven. Like, his plan for our life is gonna get us to heaven. He's ultimately knows what's best for us and what's gonna help us and all of that, you know. So, and I will say, marriage is amazing. I absolutely love marriage. I do. And for some reason, I don't know if it's because I come from a divorced family, but I feared marriage. I thought like that I would hate marriage, like that I'm going to wake up and just dread the man that I'm next to, you know, and I don't know why I thought that. And there are definitely times where it's hard, like we don't agree on everything. In fact, we're very opposite. Like our personalities, we took the personality test. I forget the name of it, but we literally are the opposite on every single thing. Like, I kid you not. But we love each other so much. We do. And it's healthy and it's a holy marriage, you know, and we definitely like help each other to grow in holiness. And, you know, it's not always fun. It's not always easy. But thankfully, we love each other, and he is my best friend, the love of my life. Like, I wake up peaceful knowing that I'm in God's will every day. Like, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful for my husband. Like, I love marriage. It is so holy and so good. And that's because we strive for holiness. We want holiness. We want to be wholesome. My husband said it so well to me. It was a couple years back, but he, you know, we pray together every night as a family. And he said, Lord, I thank you for our marriage, and I pray that our marriage is a gift to you, that we can be holy and bring you joy through our marriage. And man, that is the kind of man you want to marry. Like, he is so awesome, and he puts God's will before mine, and there's nothing better than that. And so anyway, marriage is awesome. It's amazing. I pray for all of you. I wish I had like a way you guys could all meet up, because I've had many men and women single asking for help, and I wish I could help you all. I will say Pope John Paul II, I feel like helped us get together. I mean, it was, you know, the Sacred Heart that I prayed to, but I feel like Pope John Paul II, he did theology of the body, and I feel like he's just amazing. I absolutely love him. So pray to him, ask him to help you and lead your spouse, because it takes two to tango. There are, you know, I told my husband, I said, I was ready for you like right out of high school. I could care less about a career or going to college. I mean, I did that, but I really wanted to get married and be in my vocation. And Eric, my husband, said, I was not ready for you. Like, he was definitely into, you know, going to college. That was his focus, and then going into his career. And then after his career was going, then he cared about, you know, then he was about his vocation and stuff. So it takes two to tango. So even though you might be ready, your spouse might not be ready and stuff. So anyway, it's amazing. I hope and pray that you will all just beg God to lead you to his will, whether it's marriage or not marriage, and use your singlehood to glorify God. He can use you in your singlehood. Just open your hand and say, God, where do you want me? Like, how can I use my gifts and talents right here, right now, while I'm single? And who knows, maybe he'll lead you to a mission trip and you'll meet your spouse there. Or, you know, you don't know. But always give it to God, because he wants what's best for you. He knows what's best for you. All right, this is already pretty long. So until next time, I will see you all later. God bless. Bye.